What happens when a night of dancing with other men leads to a morning filled with silence and legal papers? How does a seemingly innocent desire for freedom spiral into a battle over trust, reputation, and rights? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Kendra, and this is where everything started to fall apart. A night of freedom that turned into a disaster, and now I'm sitting here wondering if I've ruined my marriage for good. It's funny, how one night of dancing, one harmless moment where I just wanted to let go, could lead to a series of events that would completely change everything. But let me backtrack. Austin and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3. To everyone around us, we were that couple. Everyone said we were perfect, that our relationship was solid, enviable even. Austin was the loving, attentive husband, and I was the grateful wife. At least, that's how it seemed. To be honest, I didn't know when it started to feel suffocating. At first, his constant affection was charming, even a little exciting. He was always touching me, hugging me, kissing me, complimenting me. It felt good. It made me feel wanted, but over time, it became overwhelming. Every touch had a purpose, every glance had meaning. His love felt like a weight, like I was carrying it on my shoulders all the time. I know it sounds selfish, but when you're the one being constantly pursued, when every hug turns into him getting turned on, every casual touch feels like he's expecting something more, it starts to feel like you can't breathe. I didn't know how to tell him this, how to express that his affection was starting to feel like a constant pressure. I didn't want to hurt him. I knew he loved me, and maybe that was part of the problem. He loved me too much, or at least that's how I felt. He never made it difficult for me, never pushed me to do anything. He'd just adjust when I wasn't in the mood, which, at first, I appreciated. But as time went on, I realized I didn't want to have to worry about his physical reaction to me all the time. We'd be watching TV, and I'd feel his body tense next to mine, his hand always ready to grab mine or touch me in some way. I started resenting him for making me feel like I had to be on all the time, always aware of his desire, always trying to keep up with what he wanted. It wasn't even about sex. It was the constant attention, the overwhelming need for my presence. When I went out with my friends, when I spent time alone, I felt guilty, like I was doing something wrong, and, honestly, I started pulling away. I distanced myself emotionally. I didn't want to feel responsible for his every mood or need. I convinced myself that if I just kept pulling back, he would notice that I needed space. I didn't tell him, though. I didn't communicate, and that was the first mistake I made. I knew I was slowly building resentment, but I told myself that wasn't enough to leave. We didn't fight, we didn't argue much. The tension wasn't in words, it was in the little things. The way I started pulling away, the way he started noticing and getting frustrated with my silence. But instead of talking about it, instead of confronting him, I just kept going, trying to make myself feel better by justifying my need for freedom. Then came the night that would change everything. It was a Friday, and Austin had planned a nice evening for us. Dinner, maybe a movie. He was trying to do something romantic, something special. But at that point, I wasn't in the mood for romance. I wasn't in the mood for anything that involved him, and that wasn't his fault. I just wanted to let go, be free from all of the expectations and pressure that I'd been feeling. So, when I got a message from Rafa, the promoter I'd met a while back and had become friendly with, I didn't think twice. He was having a night at the club and asked me to join him. I thought, why not? A night of dancing, fun, no expectations, just me, being myself for once. I told Austin that I was going out with friends. I didn't explain where. I didn't need to. It was just a night out. He was disappointed, of course. He didn't want me to go, but he didn't press me. He never did. Maybe it was because he trusted me, or maybe it was because he didn't see it coming. Either way, I wasn't thinking about him when I left. I wasn't thinking about anything except having fun, escaping the suffocating routine we'd fallen into. When I got to the club, the energy was electric. The music was loud, the lights flashing, people everywhere, all dancing and laughing. And for the first time in a while, I felt alive. I wasn't someone's wife. I wasn't someone's responsibility. I was just Kendra. I let Rafa pull me onto the dance floor, and before I knew it, I was laughing, spinning, losing myself in the rhythm. I wasn't even aware of the men around me, flirting, dancing, enjoying the attention. But I was, and I liked it. It felt good to be wanted, to feel like I had something that wasn't defined by my relationship. Then I saw him, Austin, standing by the bar, arms crossed, watching me. He didn't move, didn't approach me. He just stood there, his eyes locked on mine. I could see the anger in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. He didn't even approach. I told myself it was jealousy. He was upset, but I convinced myself that it was because he cared, that somehow I had triggered something in him. And maybe, just maybe, I liked that. It felt powerful to have that control, to know that he cared enough to be jealous. But as the night wore on, I started to feel uncomfortable. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept dancing, kept laughing, but the whole time, Austin stayed by the bar, not speaking to me, not even acknowledging that he had been there. It was like he was observing me, making a silent judgment. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't care what he thought. I didn't care that he was hurt. I was doing this for me. But when I got home later, everything changed. Austin was sitting in the dark, waiting for me. He didn't yell, didn't say a word. He just sat there, his face unreadable. I walked in, expecting some kind of confrontation, expecting anger or frustration, but all I got was silence. And in that silence, I felt the weight of what I had done. He didn't ask where I had been, who I was with. He didn't accuse me of anything. He just looked at me, his eyes calm, but filled with something I couldn't understand. The silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. He didn't argue with me, didn't make excuses. He simply stayed silent, and that silence made me feel smaller than anything else could have. I didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't the reaction I was expecting. It wasn't the anger, the frustration, the accusations. It was just calm. It was the quiet before the storm, and I had no idea what that storm was going to look like. But I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't over. I thought that silence meant surrender, that he would just let me get away with it. But now, as I sit here thinking about it, I realize it was the beginning of something much more dangerous. Austin wasn't going to fight me with words. He wasn't going to raise his voice or make a scene. He was going to fight me in a way I never saw coming. He was going to use silence as his weapon, and I had no idea what that meant until it was too late. I went to bed that night, my mind racing, thinking about how to fix things. But there was no fixing this, was there? The damage had been done. The trust had been broken, and it was all my fault. Little did I know, that night was only the beginning of the end. The next morning, I woke up late, groggy from the night before. My head throbbed a little from the alcohol, but nothing too serious. I rolled over to Austin's side of the bed, but the space was cold, empty. I couldn't remember the last time his side of the bed had been so empty. He wasn't there. I figured he had left early for work, but something felt off, like there was more to it than just a normal morning. I stood up, stretched, and padded my way to the kitchen. Maybe he had just gone to get breakfast or run an errand. Maybe we were going to talk about last night later. I made my coffee, letting the sound of the brewing machine fill the silence. It was the kind of silence that made everything seem louder. My mind kept flashing back to last night, to the club, to the way Austin had looked at me across the bar, standing there like some stranger, his expression unreadable. I had convinced myself that I hadn't done anything wrong, that it was just a night of fun, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I was still trying to shake off the uncomfortable feeling in my chest when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. Sarah, had a blast last night. You looked amazing. Hope Austin wasn't too mad. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a rush of guilt wash over me. I wasn't sure if it was guilt from my actions or guilt from not caring enough to talk to Austin about it. I replied quickly, trying to brush off any lingering doubts. Me, it's fine. He's just overreacting. I'm fine. We're fine. I hit send and immediately felt a knot in my stomach, but the message was out there now. It was easier to pretend everything was fine when you told yourself it was. I wasn't ready to admit what was really going on, not yet. When I heard Austin's car pull into the driveway, I felt a pang of anxiety. I didn't know what to expect. Would he be cold? Would he avoid me like he did yesterday? Or would he confront me, demand answers? The front door opened, and I heard him step inside, his footsteps heavy but slow. He didn't say anything. I turned to see him standing there, his eyes tired, as if he hadn't slept at all. He had that look about him, the kind of look that made you think something was wrong, even if he wasn't saying it out loud. He put his keys on the counter and took off his jacket. The way he moved was so methodical, like everything had a purpose, like even his silence was planned. Morning, I said, trying to sound casual as if nothing had happened, as if the night before hadn't happened. He didn't answer immediately. He just nodded, his face expressionless, and made his way to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator door and stood there, looking inside, as if he had no idea what he was doing. It was a strange moment, like he was trapped in his own head, trying to make sense of things that didn't have an easy explanation. I stood there, waiting, feeling the weight of his silence pressing down on me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to break it. "Are you going to say something?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I meant it to be. He finally turned to face me. His eyes were cold, calculating. He looked at me for a moment, like he was trying to decide what to say, what to do next. Then he spoke, his voice low and measured. "I don't need to say anything, Kendra. I think you already know what's going on." His words hung in the air, heavy, making my stomach turn. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? Sorry? No, that wouldn't have been enough. And the truth was, I didn't even know if I was sorry. "I saw you last night," he continued, his voice getting colder. "I saw everything. I didn't have to say anything to you because you made it pretty clear how you feel." The reality of what he was saying hit me like a ton of bricks. He saw me dancing. He saw me laughing, flirting with other men. And I couldn't deny it. I couldn't pretend it was nothing. I had done it, and I had enjoyed it. "I didn't think you'd care that much," I muttered, trying to downplay it, trying to make it sound insignificant. But the words felt hollow, even to me. "You didn't think I'd care?" He stepped closer, his face now inches from mine. His eyes were searching mine, looking for some kind of explanation, some kind of justification. "You think I don't care about you? About us?" I flinched, but I didn't move away. I stood there, trapped in the moment, not knowing how to fix this. The silence between us stretched longer than it should have, filled only with the sound of our breathing. "Last night wasn't just about you having fun, Kendra," Austin continued, his voice quieter now, but still full of emotion. "It was about you disrespecting me. You made a choice last night, and now I have to live with it." I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to apologize, but I didn't feel like it would make a difference. What good were words when the damage had already been done? "I think you need to think about what you really want," he said, his voice softer now. "And I need to think about what I'm willing to tolerate." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. His words were sinking in, but the reality of the situation hadn't fully hit me yet. I thought this was something we could laugh off, move past, but it wasn't that simple. He turned to leave the kitchen, and I heard him mutter, I'm going to the office. We'll talk later. I stood there, staring at his back as he walked out. My heart pounded in my chest. The words, "we'll talk later," rang in my ears. It wasn't the first time we'd had a tough conversation, but something told me this time was different. The rest of the day dragged on. I kept checking my phone, hoping to see a text from him, hoping for something that would tell me it wasn't over, but nothing came. He was silent, just like the night before. And I was left with nothing but my own thoughts, replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of what had happened. When Austin came home that evening, he didn't look at me. He went straight to the study, sat down at his desk, and started working on his laptop. The quiet tension between us was suffocating. I stood at the doorway, unsure of what to do. "Are we going to talk?" I asked finally, my voice shaking. He didn't look up. He just sighed, the kind of sigh that told me everything I needed to know. "I don't think there's much to say, Kendra. You've already made your choice." The words hit me like a slap. I wanted to argue, to explain myself, but deep down, I knew he was right. I had made my choice. And now, there was no going back. I walked away from the doorway, my heart sinking in my chest. There was no point in trying to convince him that it didn't matter, that it was just a night of fun. It mattered. I mattered to him, and I had chosen to ignore that for the sake of a few hours of freedom. That night, I lay in bed, the space next to me cold and empty. Austin didn't come to bed until late, after I had already fallen asleep. He didn't touch me. He didn't try to talk to me. He just lay there in silence, the distance between us growing wider with each passing moment. I should have known then that silence wasn't just silence. It was his way of processing, his way of preparing. But I didn't realize that until much later, and by then it was too late. The next few days were a blur of tension and silence. Every conversation I had with Austin felt strained, like we were both walking on eggshells. He had always been the calm one, the steady one who didn't get caught up in drama or emotion. But now, every word he spoke seemed measured, every glance cold, and I hated it. I hated the way he withdrew, the way he wouldn't look at me the same way he used to. The little things, the moments we had shared that once felt effortless, now felt distant, strained. I couldn't stand the silence, but I didn't know how to break it. Every time I tried to approach him, to explain myself, to apologize, he just nodded politely, his face unreadable. He wasn't angry, he wasn't yelling at me, he wasn't even crying. He just seemed indifferent, and that, more than anything, terrified me. I knew I had done something wrong. But somehow, I couldn't bring myself to truly admit it. In my mind, I justified my actions. I told myself I needed that night out, that dancing with other men wasn't a big deal. It was just a fun night. I had been trapped in this marriage for so long, and I needed to feel free, to feel desired again. Austin should understand that, right? After all, he had always been the one who was needy, the one who expected me to always be there, to always give him attention. I just needed a break. But every time I looked at him, I realized I had never really considered how much he needed me too. I had never really understood how my actions would make him feel. And now, he wasn't showing me how he felt. He was showing me something worse. Apathy. By the end of the week, things had only gotten worse. We barely spoke. The only time we exchanged words was when necessary, like when he asked me to help him with something around the house, or when we discussed basic logistics like what time we were eating dinner. But beyond that, we were strangers living under the same roof. One evening, after dinner, I tried again. I needed to fix this. I didn't want to lose him. I couldn't lose him. But the longer I waited, the harder it was to get back to what we had. I sat across from him in the living room, where he was reading a book. The soft hum of the TV in the background barely registered. The room felt cold. The air between us was thick with unspoken words. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't immediately respond. He just kept his eyes on the pages of the book, as if he hadn't heard me. I repeated myself, a little more firmly this time. "Austin, can we talk?" Finally he looked up. His gaze met mine, but there was no warmth in it. His eyes were empty. Not angry, not sad, just empty. "About what?" he asked, his voice flat, almost like he was talking to a coworker. I swallowed, trying to find the right words. "About what happened. About what I did." He closed the book and set it down on the coffee table, but his movements were slow, deliberate. He wasn't rushing to fix this. He wasn't in a hurry to make me feel better. He was just present. "What do you want me to say, Kendra?" he asked, his voice quiet but cutting. "I saw everything. I know what you did. I know who you were with. And honestly, I don't think there's anything to talk about anymore. You made your choice." I flinched at his words, the sting of them cutting through me. "I didn't think it was a big deal," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "It was just a night out, Austin. I needed it. I needed to feel like myself again, like I'm more than just your wife." "You think I don't understand that?" he replied, his voice still calm, but now with an edge of frustration. "You think I don't see you? That I don't see what you need? But what you did wasn't just about you, Kendra. It was about us. It was about the fact that you didn't even care enough to talk to me about it, to tell me how you were feeling before you went out and did whatever you did. You didn't care enough to even check in with me." "I just wanted to have fun," I said, almost pleading, my voice shaking now. "I didn't want to worry about anything. I didn't want to think about how much pressure I felt, how I felt like I was losing myself in this marriage. I just wanted to feel free." He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just stared at me, his face unreadable. Finally, he shook his head, slowly. "It's not about freedom, Kendra. It's about respect. You disrespected me. You disrespected everything we built together." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. What could I say to that? How could I possibly explain myself when I knew, deep down, that he was right? I had disrespected him. I had taken him for granted, thinking I could do whatever I wanted without any consequences. And now, here I was, sitting across from him, trying to make things right, but all I had to offer were excuses. "Maybe this is who you really are, Kendra," Austin continued, his voice breaking the silence. "Maybe you've always been this way, and I just didn't see it. But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not." The finality in his words hit me harder than I expected. I had thought that by apologizing, by explaining myself, I could fix this, but nothing was working. The more I tried to get through to him, the more I realized that the distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you." He didn't respond. Instead, he stood up and walked to the door, grabbed his jacket, and without a word, left the house. I sat there, stunned. I hadn't expected him to leave, not like that. He was always the one who stayed calm, the one who worked through things. But now, he was gone, and I didn't know if he was coming back. The hours dragged on. I kept staring at the door, waiting for him to come back, but he didn't. I texted him a few times, but nothing. No replies, no calls, just silence. By the time it got late, I realized something I had been avoiding all day. Austin wasn't coming back that night, and that thought terrified me more than anything. I had always thought that no matter what happened, we would always work things out. We'd talk about it, we'd get through it. But now I wasn't so sure. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure if there was anything left to fix. That's when I heard the sound of Austin's car pulling into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat, and I rushed to the door. But when I opened it, I didn't find him standing there with the kind of apology I had hoped for. Instead, I saw him holding something. A folder, papers. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Austin looked at me for a long time, his face unreadable. He didn't speak at first, just handed me the folder. "It's for you," he said simply, his voice calm but filled with something I couldn't understand. I opened the folder slowly, not sure what to expect. And then, when I saw what was inside, documents, legal papers, I felt the world shift beneath me. My stomach dropped, and I looked up at him, my mouth dry. "What is this?" I managed to whisper, my heart racing. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned around and walked back to his car, leaving me standing there with the papers in my hands. For the first time, I truly understood what silence meant. And it wasn't just silence anymore. It was action. It was something far worse. The room was spinning. My hands shook as I held the papers, staring at the legal documents in my hands. I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. Was this real? Was Austin really doing this? The folder was heavy in my hands, full of papers that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. I barely understood half of it, but the words I did comprehend were enough to make my heart skip a beat. Divorce papers, custody arrangements, financial planning. I stood frozen in place, trying to process it all, trying to make sense of what was happening. I could hear the sound of Austin's car driving off in the distance. My chest tightened as the reality of the situation settled in. He wasn't coming back. This wasn't just some disagreement anymore. He was done. I hadn't expected this, not like this. Divorce, custody. These weren't words I thought I'd ever see connected to our relationship. Sure, we had our issues. Everyone did. But divorce? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought we were better than this. I thought I could talk my way out of anything, that we'd work through our problems like we always had. But not this time. This time, Austin had already made up his mind. I couldn't even remember how long I stood there, holding the papers in my hands. Time seemed to stretch on, each second longer than the last. I felt sick to my stomach. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. I had to talk to him. I had to fix this before it was too late. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, my hand still trembling. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I left a message, my voice shaky, trying to sound calm. "Austin, please, I need to talk to you. Please, come home. We can fix this. We can work through it. I know we can. I love you. Please don't do this." I hung up, staring at the screen, hoping he would call back, hoping he would pick up, that this was just a misunderstanding. But as the minutes passed, and then an hour, I realized he wasn't going to call. He wasn't going to come back. I couldn't believe it. My mind raced, replaying every moment of the past week, the club, the dancing, the silence that followed. I had thought he would get over it. I thought he would forgive me. But instead, he had quietly prepared himself for this moment, gathering evidence, making plans. I had underestimated him. I had thought he was the one who needed me, who relied on me. But in the end, it was me who had been dependent. Dependent on him always forgiving me, always accepting my mistakes. And now, here I was, holding the papers that would end it all. I sat down on the couch, staring at the documents. My stomach churned. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I had always thought that if things ever went this far, I would be ready, that I would fight for us. But now, with the cold reality of it all in front of me, I realized I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for this. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from Sarah. "Sarah, are you okay? I haven't heard from you all day. What's going on with you and Austin? You've been quiet lately." I stared at the message for a moment, unsure of how to respond. What could I even say? "Hey, I think my marriage is falling apart, but I'm fine, just taking it one day at a time." I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. I didn't even know what the truth was. I thought about calling her, asking for advice. She always knew what to say, always had an answer for everything. But I knew deep down that nothing anyone could say would change what had already happened. Austin had made his decision, and now I had to deal with the consequences of my actions. I decided to take a shower, hoping the water would wash away the overwhelming feeling of panic that had settled in my chest. The cool water didn't help. It just made everything feel colder, lonelier. When I stepped out of the shower, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I had always thought I was strong, independent, but now I felt weak, small, like everything I had built had crumbled in an instant. I didn't know how long I stood there, just staring at myself. But eventually, I pulled myself together, wiped my face dry, and headed back to the living room. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do next. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Austin. I didn't know if I was ready to read it, but I couldn't stop myself. I clicked on the notification, my heart racing as I opened the message. Austin. I'm not coming back tonight. I've made my decision. I can't keep living like this. I'm done. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read his words. He was serious. This wasn't a temporary setback. This wasn't a fight that we could fix with a few heartfelt words. He was done. He had made his choice. I stared at the message for what felt like forever, the words swimming in front of my eyes. Done. That was it. It wasn't just a matter of fixing things. It was over. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. I had no right to cry. I had done this to myself. I had pushed him away, and now I was paying the price. I felt a surge of anger, a fierce, burning anger at myself for letting this happen. How had I not seen this coming? How had I not realized what I was doing? I could have stopped it. I could have fixed things before it got this far. But now it was too late. I threw the phone down on the couch and stood up, pacing the room. I needed to fix this. I couldn't lose him. I wouldn't lose him. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was nothing I could do. I had crossed a line, and Austin wasn't going to come back from that. I thought about all the things I had taken for granted, the way he always supported me, the way he always tried to make me happy, the way he had trusted me. And I had betrayed that trust, all for a night of freedom, a fleeting moment of attention. I had been selfish, and now I was paying the price. I couldn't undo what I had done. I couldn't take back the things I had said, the things I had done. The damage was done. I sank back onto the couch, my head spinning, my heart heavy. I didn't know what to do. The future seemed so uncertain now, like everything I had known was slipping away from me. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take any more, I heard a knock at the door. My heart leaped in my chest, but when I opened it, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Austin stood there, his face pale, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, like he was trying to decide what to do next. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't know how to fix this. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but cold. "We need to talk," he said, his eyes locking with mine. And in that moment, I knew everything was about to change. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at Austin. His words hung in the air, heavy and final. "We need to talk." The calmness in his voice unnerved me. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but it certainly wasn't this. I had braced myself for a confrontation, for anger, for accusations. But all I got was this quiet, measured tone. His eyes held no trace of the man I once knew, the man who would laugh off my mistakes, the one who would forgive me, even when I didn't deserve it. No, this was someone different. Someone who had made a decision, and now I was left to face the consequences. I stepped back, letting him into the house. The silence between us was deafening as he walked past me without a word. I couldn't bring myself to say anything either. What was there to say? What could I say to undo the damage? I closed the door behind us and turned to face him. He was standing by the kitchen counter, staring down at the papers I had left scattered on the table earlier. The divorce papers, the legal documents that had confirmed everything I had been dreading. The end. Austin didn't look at me. He just stared at the papers, his jaw clenched. The calmness in his demeanor was starting to slip away, and I could see the tension in his body, the way his hands fisted at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might finally break, but then he took a deep breath and spoke. "You don't get to just walk away from this, Kendra," he said, his voice quiet but sharp. "You don't get to make everything about you, and then expect me to just sit back and take it. You don't get to treat me like I'm some kind of afterthought." The sting of his words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat. How could I defend what I had done? How could I explain to him that I had been overwhelmed, that I had been desperate for attention, for validation? How could I make him understand that, in my twisted logic, I thought I was doing what I needed to feel alive again? "I didn't mean to hurt you," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I didn't. I wasn't thinking about how it would affect you. I was just trying to find myself again." Austin finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. His gaze was steady, but the hurt was evident in the way his eyes flickered, in the way his lips tightened. "You never thought about me, Kendra. You never stopped to think about what it would do to me. You think I don't see how you've been pulling away, how you've been slowly shutting me out? You think I didn't notice when you stopped being the woman I married?" His words cut deep, deeper than anything else he could have said. I had pulled away, hadn't I? I had distanced myself from him, from everything we had. I had taken him for granted, expecting him to always be there, to always forgive me, no matter what I did. And now, here we were, on the verge of losing everything. "I know I've been distant," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've been selfish, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you what I was feeling without making it worse." Austin shook his head, the disappointment in his eyes cutting through me like a blade. "You think this is about me, Kendra? You think this is about you needing to find yourself? You know what I've been dealing with. You know how many times I've tried to reach out, to make things better, to make you see how much I care. But it's never enough, is it? It's never enough for you." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. How could I defend myself when he was right? How could I explain that I was struggling, that I felt like I was losing my sense of self in this relationship? How could I explain that all I wanted was to feel wanted again, to feel like I was more than just a wife, more than just a caretaker, more than just someone who existed for someone else's needs? But none of that mattered now. None of my excuses, none of my justifications could change what I had done. The damage was done. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at Austin as he turned away from me, walking toward the door. "I need some space," he said quietly, his voice almost distant now. "I need time to figure out what I'm doing, and I don't think I can do that while I'm still here, while I'm still living in the same house as you." I felt a coldness wash over me, a numbness that spread through my chest. He wasn't coming back. He was serious. He was really leaving. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix this. I had ruined everything, and now I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my own actions. "You can't just leave," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of panic and desperation. "You can't walk away like this. We can fix this, Austin. We can work through it. We've been through worse. We've made it through everything together. Please don't leave me." He stopped at the door, his hand on the handle, but he didn't turn around. "I'm not leaving because I want to, Kendra," he said softly. "I'm leaving because I don't have a choice anymore. I've given everything to this marriage, and I'm not going to keep fighting for something that you don't even want to fight for." His words hit me like a freight train, knocking the wind out of me. He was right. I hadn't been fighting for us. I had been fighting for myself, for some kind of validation that I wasn't getting from him, from our marriage. And now it was too late. "Please," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Don't leave me. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be better. Just don't leave me." He hesitated for a moment, his hand still on the door, but then he finally spoke, his voice quiet but final. "I don't think you can change, Kendra. Not for me. and not for you. You need to figure out who you really are, and I need to figure out who I am without you." With that, he walked out the door, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, the sound of his footsteps echoing in my mind long after he had gone. I collapsed onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The tears came then, hot and uncontrollable. I had lost him. I had lost everything I had ever wanted, all because I couldn't stop making excuses for my own behavior. All because I didn't know how to just be with him. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know if it could be fixed. The days after Austin left were a blur of emptiness and self-loathing. I spent hours pacing the house, trying to make sense of everything, but nothing felt real anymore. Every corner of this place, every picture on the wall, every little thing that had once felt like home, now felt like a reminder of my failure. The silence was deafening. The house felt too big, too cold, without Austin's presence. I kept hoping, waiting, for him to walk through the door, to tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But he didn't. And the longer I waited, the more I realized that he wasn't coming back. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text, a call, anything. But there was nothing, just emptiness. I tried calling him a few times, but every time it went straight to voicemail. I sent him messages, pleading with him to come home, to talk to me. But nothing. He was gone, and I was left to face the consequences of my actions. The worst part was that I didn't know what to do now. I didn't know how to fix this. How could I? I had broken everything. I had taken him for granted, assumed that his love would always be there, that I could keep making excuses and everything would be fine. But now, I was alone. And I was finally starting to see the truth. Austin had been the steady force in my life, the one who always believed in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. He had supported me, loved me, even when I didn't deserve it, and I had thrown it all away. I spent days in a haze of guilt, replaying every moment, every argument, every time I pulled away from him. I kept asking myself, why didn't I see it sooner? Why didn't I fight for him? But the answers never came. All I had was the reality that he was gone, and I was left to live with the mess I had made. Then, one day, as I was sitting in the living room, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my email. I hesitated before opening it, knowing it could be anything. But when I saw the subject line, my stomach dropped. It was from Austin's lawyer. The email was short, cold. It confirmed everything. The divorce papers were filed. The process had begun. There was no going back now. I felt the floor beneath me give way as I read the words, realizing that this wasn't just some temporary fallout. It was real. Austin had moved on, and now it was a matter of paperwork, logistics, and legalities. The life I had known, the life we had built, was over. I sank back into the couch, my head spinning. The pain in my chest was unbearable, like someone had ripped my heart out. But I knew it was my fault. I had pushed him to this point. I had driven him away with my selfishness, my need for attention. And now there was no fixing it. There was nothing I could do to make it right. Tears blurred my vision as I sat there, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to go on without him. But deep down, I knew that this was the price I had to pay. I had lost the one person who had ever truly loved me, and I had no one to blame but myself. I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall, knowing that the road ahead would be long and hard. But for the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel the weight of my actions. It was the least I could do. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward finally understanding what I had lost.